Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Florette carefully select their salad leaves to ensure a perfectly balanced mix. As sponsors of Series 8 of the podcast, Florette have something to suit everyone's taste, from mild to strong salad leaves in bags that can be recycled at supermarkets. So whatever deliciousness you are cooking, pair it up with the perfect salad and make it unflorettable. Well, we bring all the best guests to you on the podcast, and today's guest is no exception. Author of numerous award-winning foodie books, Mark Diacono is a grower, a cook, a speaker, and all-round very knowledgeable guy with a huge array of interesting and delicious homegrown food ideas. So today's episode is about Mark's background, some growing tips, but also what to make with the food you harvest, including getting the balance right when fermenting. I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
It's a total treat to be here. You make me sound like I'm not entirely dim at everything, so thank you very much. So, very welcome.
Oh, you do have one of my dream surnames. I would love to have that surname. Also in my top 5 is Svensson as well. I like that.
Is good. Yeah.
Svensson or Diacono. Yeah, I just don't like Perry. I want something with a few more syllables.
Yeah, but Perry's kind of sounds optimistic. Plus, it's a very nice drink.
Yeah, that's very true.
I always wanted to have, in the fashion of sort of American private detectives, I always wanted to have a surname for a first name. You know, like Trent or something like that. You know, something that's not really a first name, is a surname.
Trent Diacono.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right. Although in the school I went to, though, it would kind of cast you out from the norm. So all you got on the back of it was dead arms and dead legs and things like that.
So, Mark Diacono, I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to fall off the track a few times, I'm very sure. But start us off at the very beginning. Where did your love of gardening and food start? And then give us a little potted history of your career. Basically, tell us all about yourself, as if this is a dating service or something.
Okay, well, I'll try it, yes. I wasn't one of those people who kind of got excited about gardening when I was a kid at all. In fact, I remember really, really clearly watching Gardener's World back in the day, right back in the day, and thinking, if I ever got into this, somebody ought to shoot me, you know what I mean? This, watching televised golf, anything like that, it's like, oh, what's happened? And then
Ellen, close down the Zoom.
No, exactly. I feel an imposter. But what happened, I was very interested in kind of landscapes and the countryside and stuff, and that was my kind of previous job. And then I met my now wife, and she was really into gardening, and I had a garden, so became deeply attractive to her on that front. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do? I need to do something while we're out in the garden, and that was grow spuds, and that really got me the bug. Totally got me the bug. I just grew some spuds, and it was like, hey, this is, it was really odd. It was like hearing a song by a band you hate and going, hang on, they're quite all right.
Yeah.
What have I thought all these years?
Like and a botanical epiphany.
I did. I had a botanical epiphany. Yeah, exactly that. And it was extraordinary. And then I got it really bad. I started. There was another kind of real turning point, which was I was with a friend in Suffolk, doing some work, and she said, staying at their place, and she said, "Oh, the mulberry tree's in fruit. Have you ever had one?" I'm like, "No, it's a made-up thing, isn't it, for a nursery rhyme?" And she was like, "No, eat some." And by some massive difference, the best fruit I've ever eaten. It was just extraordinary. It was like, oh my God, why aren't we throwing these in our mouths in bucketfuls every day? This is just ridiculous. And, they're too delicate. They're too, vulnerable to squishing and squashing really quickly. So you can only really take them from the tree and then eat them within the day. They don't travel
in your mouth.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I've got to grow some if I ever want to eat these again. And I can't imagine living life without mulberries again. And it really just spiraled out of control from there. I just, I literally didn't know what I was doing. I read lots of things. I planted lots of stuff. I accidentally got involved with River Cottage right back in the day. And didn't ever really I wasn't really working for them as such, but I kind of set the direction in which they wanted to garden and kind of led the team and ran some courses and wrote a few books for them. I started blogging about what I was doing on this small holding where I'd started planting loads of mulberries and turned from a really crap writer into someone who was less crap. And then obviously wanted to, what do I do with this amazing stuff apart from, funnel mulberries into my mouth, and really, honestly, that's really how it went. Largely accidental, a real pleasure, and kind of it really illustrates to me how easy it is not to find your thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So much of it is random luck. You need to step through. You need to step through the doors of the carriage on the tube. Rather than, it's just, it's such small things, lots of luck, lots of accident, lots of, if I hadn't tasted those mulberries that day, I'd probably still be doing what I used to do. And there are many, many little things like that in my life where I can go, crikey, I wonder if
that's just that was the moment.
Yeah, through being open-minded and being willing to try things as well, isn't it? So
I guess it is, and actually the other thing is throwing yourself at stuff. You two do this. If you're going to do it, let's do it.
Oh, just say yes.
Just say yes and see what happens.
Yeah, it always worked out fine.
Yeah. Have the default answer being yes. Life will be just great, and I really, really feel that. And it is something I think both kind of the gardening and the side of the kitchen garden thing are both very welcoming and very. You can make your own thing, no one. You don't need permission from anybody. You just do your thing, and it's just a joy. It's a life enhancing joy. It's not I see no line between when I'm working and when I'm not. It's just.
I love that actually. Like it's never really a job, is it? When you're thoroughly enjoying what you're doing, and I always say. If anyone says, how are you or how things or how is this? I'm like, oh, it's fine. Because even if it's not fine, it will be fine. And I think if you have that kind of view, then you throw yourself into whatever, knowing whatever happens, it will work out. And then you experiment and you find all these new things. And I love how you started like from potatoes as well at the end of the day, like that classic gardening, it's like the classic grow your own thing when you harvest your potatoes. Like it never fails to be amazing, no matter how many years you do it.
It's even more amazing when they're under a tomato plant, though, I have to say.
You are a tomato man, of course.
Just for the timeline, though, what were you doing before, and how long ago was this potato-based epiphany? The potato-based epiphany was kind of 2000. Around then, 2000. It was 2000. I was living in Kent, and before that, I'd had a very, very lazy. Sort of late teens and 20s, really idle, spending most of my time just going to see lots of bands and all of that stuff. And then I very late on did a degree and a master's in kind of environmental management. And then I did that. So I was advising local authorities and government agencies about managing the landscape. So there's kind of a connection, but they felt like completely different. They felt very, very different. And was it something you enjoyed or not?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I really liked it. I realized very early that I'm deeply unemployable. So I kind of set up my own business doing it.
You can only employ yourself.
I feel like that. I don't think
I feel now. Yeah,
I was employed, and I'm not sure. Like, it wasn't really for me.
Because you just look on companies and see how how many layers, how much time is wasted, and how you can just get the job done just by doing it yourself. Just
get it done.
Yeah.
And your own way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I'm totally with you. And now, we're self-unemployed, as they say.
Self-unemployed, I like that. That's
but it is, it's just nice. You can explore your own thing without it being constrained, and just try and build it into something that you enjoy, that doesn't leave you too impoverished.
Yeah. And your success is down to you, yourself, and you're responsible for that yourself, which is the most empowering thing ever as well.
It's a good thing, isn't it? It's all right. Yeah,
yeah.
So what?
This isn't a self-help podcast, by the way, just to warn you.
I was going to say
we are going to talk about fermentation in due course.
We're on a different trajectory here. And Mark, it would be really good to know kind of what your setup is now, like where you are now, like what garden do you have now? Obviously, you've got mulberries, and I hope you've harvested some potatoes, since that's where it all began. What's your setup now?
It's really interesting setup, because so for maybe I don't know, where are we? Maybe 15 years or so, I had this small holding that was 2 blank fields that I planted with 17 acres. So I planted like 4 acres of vineyard and tens of thousands of things, many of which hadn't been grown in this country. There'd be and my question really always to myself was, is it 2 or is it 100 that I'm going to plant or something? So I planted 100. I planted, 60 pecans that are, unusual stuff, all that kind of stuff. Almonds, quince, medlars, lots of forgotten things. And the interesting thing now that I've got a regular garden is going, how can I take all the ideas I had there and most of the ingredients and make it work in a kind of just a regular domestic setting, which I love this challenge, because you're going, okay, I've got to think in a different way. It's 1 of something, or 2 if they need pollinating. Where's it going to go? What else does it affect? How can I underplant it so that I get the most out of my space? Can I think of it like a forest garden where you're planting in tiers and different levels in the same area? All of that stuff, that I had the luxury of space. But the thing that comes with a lot of space is you spend so much time maintaining the stuff in the middle, like, mowing. If you've got 17 acres of orchard, let's say, you're mowing 16 and a half acres of that where the trees aren't, and all the spaces in between. And this is really different. So I can fill it, but I haven't got the luxury of space. So it's been really good fun just kind of going, okay, that's how I've got to try and bring things together, making some mistakes, moving stuff around. And my wife is a medical herbalist. So, herbs are a big deal to her, and not just the edible ones, but all the other useful ones too. So we kind of got to try and bring all this stuff together, and it's really interesting and very creative for its limitations. And that is often what happens if you stop mithering yourself about the limitations and go, okay, how do I play within this limitation? That's
I think it starts the other side of your brain, doesn't it? The other side, the creative side of your brain, rather than the logical side. You're like, how can I do all of this? Like, what can I fit in this space?
Because you're appreciating what you've got there more, because you've got less space to work with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love all that. I love seeing how people do stuff on, balconies and little areas, and maybe, just taking somewhere that you think, I don't know, maybe just a stereotypical tiny garden that's just, really enclosed, and it's, this, and the fence is like, so you can still play, you can still do your own thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect utopia, but you can create your own utopia. And that's the delightful thing about what we do.
Someone I must mention to you, I'm sure you probably know him, everyone does. Have you seen Spicy Moustache?
I have.
I love his urban back garden. Is really cool.
It's just incredible, and we had really lovely chats at Chelsea Flower Show, and what I love is that what I love is all the creativity that goes on around the creativity of the growing. The films he makes, just extraordinary, but also it's kind of, it's so generous. It's like, come and share this, come and try this. Can you see what I'm doing in this tiny space? You can do your you don't copy it, but do your version of this. I think what he does is absolutely extraordinary. I just think he's like a breath of fresh air, and there are plenty of breaths of fresh air, I should say, running through all of what we do, all the gardening side and the growing, which is lovely, isn't it? Because you think, surely you must have exhausted all the possibilities. And no, because it's however many.
Well, this is the
endless.
This is the great side of social media, and that is what has brought all of this. So anybody that, a lot of people, we complain about social media, the bad side of it, but there's so much creativity coming through there, and a lot of different generations as well, because you know how it can be sometimes. We think, oh, nobody young is getting into horticulture, blah, 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 blah. But actually they are, but from a lot of very different directions than what you would assume in the past as well. So I think this has been, for about 3 or 4 years now, a really golden moment for horticulture and, plant-based activities as a whole as well.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and this largely solitary solo business that can drift into the lonely. You've suddenly got this community where you can you feel part of, but also this joyful sharing where you can give and receive inspiration. And it's I absolutely love that side of social media. I think it's really empowering and exciting, and everyone has a voice, and I like that a lot.
I agree. Gardeners like to talk about gardening. They're happy to share information, which is just lovely, part of that community feel for sure.
I mean, how else could we chat to someone in New Zealand, or someone who's got a forest garden in Vermont, or somebody who's got a tiny little patch that's a garden that's made of beds from tractor tires in Zimbabwe or something. This is the only way we could do it. What we do, we're not got pen pals or whatever. It's immediate and it's joyful. And I love that side of it.
Definitely. Something else that's very creative is your writing style, and I love it. I can sit in bed and read your recipe books as if they're stories, because you write in such a fun, kind of really attention-grabbing way. So how is the book career going? How many books have you written now? Because I've got at least 3 or 4 of them, I believe, including fermentation, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, that's very lovely. I remember really clearly when I started writing anything and just doing a few kind of outward horticultural things and food things, is don't be someone else, just be yourself. And that's what I wanted to do. So this is the next book, which is out next month, is kind of spice. So it's a cook's companion to spice, and that's number 12 of all things. So I wrote some for River Cottage. I've written some purely food, recipe books, some that are pure growing, and some that are, plot to plate, half and half, and herb was the big one before that, and then there's been kind of ferment, which is in the middle. And I think everyone can write. I just think you've got to work at it quite a lot. It's like playing an instrument, work. That old Miles Davis thing, he plays virtually nothing, hardly any notes, but you've got to work. You've got to practice like hell to feel free enough to be able to do anything you want, to know that you only play 2 notes rather than 3. And if you can get away with 1, then even better.
All the better.
But also to allow yourself to be authentic how you write as well, and not try and be too formal or anyone else when you write.
Oh, totally that. And that involves that anything like that, anything creative like that involves allowing yourself to be crap. Because if you don't allow yourself to be crap, you're not relaxing enough. It's like if I was trying to think of I've just started Substacking, and I was trying to think of a good name for it. And I was chatting to Kaiono, who's a kind of, he does a lot of design and brand stuff and all of that. And he was like, just relax enough to outwardly say all the really rubbish names that will never make it, because in relaxing, it will all come out, and then you can make sense of it. And this is the big thing about writing, I think, is that you've got to let it come all out, and then you go back and hit it with a stick and make it interesting. You've said what you need to say. Now let's put it in an interesting form for other people that is still got your voice. And that's quite a deal, but it's a hell of a pleasure.
Yeah, and again, sharing your knowledge, sharing all the stuff you've created and what you want other people to try.
Well,
exactly. You mentioned your book Ferment, and we have to talk about fermenting, because I think, Mark, I've had this discussion with you about how bad I've been at it in the past. So we'd love to know.
You let the air in?
I don't really know what. Actually, there's still some in my fridge.
Oh, right.
You can go and smell it and see what you think.
I've been in your fridge once today. That's enough.
Not that bad. Okay, so we would like to kind of know a bit more about fermenting. What is it? Because we hear about it a lot. And actually, I think it's had a bit of a resurgence, hasn't it? More people have become more interested in it over the past few years. What is it? What do we have to do to ferment? What does it all mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think a lot of people find the whole thing of fermenting quite intimidating, and maybe confusing. There's a lot of fear of kind of, am I going to poison myself, and so on and so on. So it's kind of nice to kind of zoom out and go, hang on a minute, let's have a look at this thing that's fermenting. What are we doing? And the key theme is we're creating an environment where all the harmful bacteria cannot thrive. They go, they die, they're off. And all the useful ones to us can really kind of proliferate and thrive. That's what we're doing. How do we do that? We do it by adding salt, which creates the conditions which the harmful ones hate. But also we do it by either excluding oxygen, which is most of it, or including it in a certain way. So as long as you stick to the very few absolute crucial things, you're not going to kill yourself and you're going to have amazing food. Now, beyond that, the benefits are incredible. So what you're doing is trying to halt or guide the natural shift of food, which is to decompose and change and then go off. You're trying to do it in such a way that it never reaches that I'm going to go off bit, but it also changes in such a way that we get the most benefit out of it. Okay. So if I'm making sauerkraut, which is, just shredded up, usually white cabbage, you can add flavor and spices, whatever you want, caraway and all of that stuff. The thing, all sauerkraut is really shredded up white cabbage, really fine, and you add 2% of the weight of that cabbage in salt, all right? And you just rub it in a little bit, you leave it alone, and it will start to produce a little brine because it's sucking out the water from the cabbage, all right? You jam it into a jar and you keep pressing it down and pressing, literally push it down with your fist and keep doing that, and gradually, the brine will come above the top of the cabbage, okay? By pressing down as well as getting the water out of the cabbage to make this brine, you'll exclude the oxygen. And then you just leave it alone. And what happens is the saltiness gets rid of any harmful bacteria that might proliferate, but it encourages these amazing ones, the lactic acid bacteria. And what they do, they absolutely love it salty, they love it in the pH that it is, and they come along and go, hang on a minute, this is amazing here. So they multiply like crazy, and they start munching through the sugars that's in the cabbage. And in doing that, as they munch through the sugars, they do two things. They release carbon dioxide, so you typically get a little bit of a fizz with fermented food, but they also release lactic acid, hence their lactic acid bacteria, which is why most fermented food has a sourness to it. Okay, now that process you can stop at absolutely any time. So after 4 or 5 days, you taste it and you'll be going, okay, hang on a minute, that's a little bit sour. After a week, you're going, that's a bit sourer. And at any point, the way to stop that process is to pop that jar in the fridge. And it gets so cold that the bacteria can't really do a whole lot. So it's effectively stopped it, and the flavor is parked, okay? Won't get any more acidic, won't get any sourer. But if you leave it on the side, it will just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. Now, what you'd say, why would you do that? And there are lots of benefits to doing that. Number one, that will endure for as long as you like. So even on the side, that sauerkraut, I've got one downstairs that's nearly 3 years old. Okay, It's totally cool and it's delicious. The other thing it does is in the hot process of fermenting is, or fermenting, why did I just make up a word there?
Well, why not?
I got the emphasis in the wrong place.
I wasn't sure if Sarah was a word, but I let that pass.
You're a good man. You're a kind man. So the other thing that's happening is that the bacteria are altering the state of the food in such a way that it's better for us. So we eat it, we get more nutrients out of it, we get a lot of stuff that we need into us, but also what we're actually doing is ingesting some of the, eating some of these bacteria that are actively at work. Now they are colonizing and enriching our internal biome. The gut health is a massive, massive thing. And that's what we're promoting by eating some of these bacteria. So those bacteria sit around in your stomach and they get to work on all the other food we eat. So by eating fermented food, we're actually feeding ourselves twice. You know, it's such a good thing, but also it's such a great way of preserving food without throwing, 3 tons of sugar in it, which is what we normally do, or 3 tons of vinegar. And you're going, what about the salt? And you're going, yeah, but the thing is, it's in brine, and it's only enough. If you eat sauerkraut, you'll eat it and go, hang on a minute, my primary thing here isn't that salty. It's really not, because it's just sitting in this brine that does enough to keep the harmful bacteria away. You can ferment in other ways. So you can make a brine that's a 5% brine, so water with 5% of the weight of that with salt, stir it up, and that's really good for your more delicate stuff that you wouldn't want to rub salt into, like a tomato. You don't want to you just end up making tomato sauce. So you just let it ferment in, beans, amazing, mange tout, anything like that sitting in brine will ferment away over a few days and be completely delicious, and then you can just off-road with the flavors, and it's just a great thing.
Hi, I'm Jodie, one of the founders of Cayley Brothers. I'm a mushroom farmer based in West Sussex. As primary producers, we encourage anyone to grow your own, and with our range of mushroom kits, perfect for the kitchen windowsill, you can harvest mushrooms right before your meal. Not only will your mushrooms taste beyond incredible, but picked fresh, they are more nutritious than anything shop bought. Mushrooms are a nutrient-packed, nutty-flavoured treat that contain potent antioxidants, selenium, which aids your immune system, B vitamins and minerals. Our range of mushroom kits don't grow in the dark, and this is important because mushrooms grown in the light can assist in strengthening your bones because of the vitamin D they absorb and store. With so many options for textures and flavours to try, from the rich intensity of a portobello to the delicate texture of a chanterelle, all mushrooms have great nutrition. So whatever your budget, local availability, and whatever recipe you choose, there are mushrooms to suit. We swap out meat for mushrooms in any recipe and add them when they're lacking. If you've been put off from mushrooms previously because of texture, try roasting them on a griddle pan till they're browned and slightly crisp, and with a good spice rub on them too, they'll be delicious. My current favourite in this warmer weather is to incorporate raw mushrooms into a salad, thinly sliced and seasoned, and with a little lemon juice. For this you can try button mushrooms, yellow oysters, or enoki for a beautiful freshness. If you really aren't a mushroom fan, you can always feel the benefits by consuming antigens in the form of teas, powders and tinctures. Mushrooms such as reishi can help promote calmness and good sleep, or lion's mane aids neurofunction and gut health. Any way you can incorporate mushrooms into your daily nutrition is going to add health benefits as well as enjoyment in the eating, and there's just something about growing your own food that makes it look, feel and taste great. You can head over to our social media for more recipe ideas and to share yours. We hope more people will get into growing their own mushrooms and finding joy in eating freshly picked mushrooms.
You mentioned obviously the salt. What is there a type of salt that we should use when fermenting?
Yeah, there is. What you're really after is sea salt with no preservative. That's really important. So it should be fine sea salt, no preservative, no anti-caking agent, any of that, because that, what's the preservative doing? It's working in opposition to bacteria. So that's exactly what you don't want it to do. So just straight sea salt, fine sea salt, because it would dissolve quicker. That's absolutely the key. The other ideal thing is that the food is organic, so that you're not, homegrown, organic, whatever, so that you're not adding chemicals to the whole fermenting thing. And maybe if you have a water filter, it's good to use a water filter, but if not, do it anyway, because it will be fine. It's just it works better and more quickly with filtered water. But the halfway house to that is just pour a load of water out the tap into a pan and leave it overnight, and the chlorine will evaporate as a gas. So you'll end up with essentially filtered water anyway.
Oh, I never knew that.
This is cool.
I never knew that. Okay.
Such a cool description of fermenting, and I think a lot of people out there will find this really, really useful. And of course, fermenting was kind of designed to store food, over long periods. And you could do this with fruit, vegetables. Kind of, is there anything that you can't really do it with, or doesn't have any effect? And what can go with fermenting?
We can do anything really. You can ferment pretty much anything. Friends have fermented pepper, as in grinding pepper. Black pepper. Yeah. You can ferment pretty much anything. But I would say if you made sauerkraut, number one, and then you maybe go for a load of mange tout and with a bit of dill in a 5% brine and let them ferment for a few days, maybe a week, and just keep tasting. Once you've got the secret of that, oh man, you're away. You'll try everything. And if you ferment tomatoes, little cherry tomatoes whole, and you eat them after about a week or 10 days, depending on the time of year and the temperature, they taste fizzy.
Oh my God. It's the
weirdest thing. But delicious, so delicious. And as soon as you get your confidence with it, you're away. You're constantly fermenting things, making kimchi, making fruit kimchi, making sriracha, and kind of other fermented chili sauces and all of this stuff. And suddenly the gluts become opportunities to create delicious food that just go on for not just a few weeks or a few months, but for years. And this is the joy of it. It's opening a whole new world that's completely delicious and very, very simple.
And also in a crazy sort of way, it's quite a nice healthy snack as well. You're going to, maybe have a bowl of fermented mange tout in the evening as opposed to a tube of Pringles. I would do that. I know it sounds crazy, but I would do that.
I would do that as well as the tube of Pringles.
I was going to say,
maybe a mini one.
This is difficult because I fermented some. I done some sauerkraut and it came out so bad. And I think
what went wrong then?
Actually, so I was thinking about it because Mark had mentioned the salt to me before, and I was thinking maybe it was not enough salt or too much
maybe
salt.
The air.
I don't know.
Something to do with the air.
I actually think I put too many. I put caraway seeds in it, and the taste is overpowering. So I really think that's all it is, to be honest.
But the bit that I tried to do sauerkraut once, and it kind of I think it almost went a bit moldy because I didn't maybe have the cabbage under the liquid. Can you explain?
This is So
and
these
how
two
the weights work as well.
Yeah, the two things are really important. Are the percentage of salt is vital. So 2% is just the right amount to get rid of the stuff that would do you any harm, promote the good stuff, but also it then doesn't get too salty. So that's number one. The percentage has to be 2%, I would say. And you're quite right there, Michael. If you get a thing called, you can get these things called pickle pebbles, which essentially are glass discs that you put on top of the cabbage, and it just keeps it beneath the water. Now, you can cheat that. So a thing I use a lot is like a food bag, partly filled with water, tied up, and then just drop that in, and that'll do exactly the same. It will just keep everything below the water. Because probably that mold that you had on top was probably just like a yeast mold. It's absolutely, would have been totally
scared
fine.
The life out of me. I had to throw it away.
Yeah. And that would be
amateur when I did that.
Yeah. It would most people, but unless it's kind of, winking at you and it's blue, it almost certainly isn't going to do you any harm. But yeah, that's the way to keep it mold free, is just to keep that below the water.
But you overseeded yours.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So that affected the taste.
I hadn't thrown it away. I kept it, and then after I chatted, I came back and I tried a little bit again, and it just tasted caraway.
It was too much for your delicate tum.
No. Maybe.
That's what it is.
You can try that one. I'll kill you with it.
Hasn't drunk coffee for years. What sort of person is that? You trust someone that doesn't drink coffee.
We do not need to discuss my stomach issues on this podcast. Thank you very much. If somebody wanted to get started with fermenting, do you have like a really easy beginner fermenting recipe that's perhaps not sauerkraut, something a little bit different but really easy?
I think there's I kind of mentioned it a little bit, which is these dilly beans, which is quite a really easy one to do. So you make the 5% brine. So if you've got 100 ml of water, you add 100 grams of water, which is the same thing. You add 5 grams of salt and stir it like crazy. And start with boiling water, stir like crazy, get it into a jar, get a load of Mange 2 and get it in there, and maybe some dill, if you like dill, a little bit of that, and just let that ferment. Put a little something on top to keep it underneath the brine, okay, and let it ferment for maybe 4 or 5 days. And it's got to be a sealed jar, a proper sealed jar, okay. And every day you want to just fart it, okay, because it will release the carbon dioxide. So just with the lid and then tighten it up again, okay. And certainly in less than a week, when you go, you'll see the whole thing froth like crazy. It'll go like lemonade, but more, and then you have one of these amazing, like a Mange 2 or one of those kind of sugar snaps, something like that. It will be crunchy. It will be slightly salty. It will be sweet, sour. It would have taken in some of the dill. Honestly, it's just an extraordinary thing. And you'll be munching this going, how the hell am I not making this every week? Because it's just ridiculous. And that will set you off. It's totally one of those things. Once you've got your confidence and you're over the threshold, you'll be away.
I'm going to do it.
That sounds amazing. Like to have all of those different tastes in your mouth at once as well.
It's really, really good. And what we have to remember is this has been going on for centuries.
Yeah.
And around a third of the food on this planet is fermented. A third of the food we eat on this planet. We're kind of, here in kind of Western Europe and the States, Australia, we're totally in the kind of outer limits of what people normally eat. Most countries eat much more fermented food than we do, and we're the outliers. And so we think it's a bit strange, but all other food cultures eat an absolute mountain of this stuff because it's crazy good for you, and most importantly, it's completely delicious.
Interesting.
Are you good at eating natto? Have you eaten it?
I haven't. No, I haven't. Are you a fan?
Because it's fermented soybeans, and in Japan they give it to you almost as a test because they just know you're going to fail. Because like mozzarella has this real stringiness, natto has a stringiness that never breaks. And the first time I had it for breakfast in Japan, trying to eat it with chopsticks, and this stringiness was going all around the tray and everywhere, and it's impossible to eat. It really is, and that is why they give it to tourists. Yeah,
just for fun.
They kind of like eat it almost like in a kind of encapsulated in rice, almost like to make it easier.
Okay, so it's got so they can find a way.
Yeah, but it really, like to have it raw is really quite a challenge for a foreigner. Yeah,
just the deal of it, just making a mess of yourself.
But so good for you, and you're right. So many other cultures are just having this good bacteria in their diet just as a matter of course.
Totally.
Yeah. We're so backward on that.
It is, but it's changing. I think and with our drive to general, kind of wider looking at trying to be better to ourselves, and both our kind of mental kind of well-being, but also our kind of internal microbiome. It's such an important and easy part of being healthier. And I'm not much of a hippie, but I would definitely say I can't explain the shift in my resting state of kind of, my kind of energy levels are better and my kind of resting state is improved when I'm eating and drinking fermented.
Yeah, we all notice the difference. Yeah, definitely. But I feel like sometimes something like sauerkraut has a lot of bad PR for some reason, doesn't it? It's like everyone's always a bit like, ooh, and I think people don't imagine all these other, if you don't like sauerkraut, you would probably love Mange 2 that are fermented, or this or that, or
kimchi. If you like the spicy stuff, go down the kimchi road. It's really, this is the thing. It's just a treatment. It's just a way of dealing with stuff that makes it amazing for you and really, really delicious. And as you said before, preserved over such a huge time, it's endless essentially. You can keep this stuff forever, and I love that because it turns sometimes if it works out in the garden, it feels like there's a kind of double pressure to use it all, and with it comes the kind of guilt of not maybe dealing with a glut that you weren't expecting, and having things that you can turn to that allow you to enjoy it over a longer period that are really simple but amazing, like fermenting stuff. It really shifts the kind of pleasure that you get from the growing side as well. And, and that's really, really important, I think.
Just before we move on, a practical question that I've got. You say they kind of keep forever, but they keep forever kind of in a cupboard environment, or once you've got them into the fridge because you've locked in the flavor? Where is the infinite kind of storage happening?
Pretty much and I haven't found the limit to it. So I have got 3, 4, 5-year-old ferments sitting on my kitchen, sitting on my kitchen surface, absolutely at normal ambient room temperature, all of that stuff. The thing with putting them in the fridge is what usually happens is that when people start fermenting stuff, they don't want to go too far. They're a bit nervous. So they stop when it's sour, a little bit sour, and then they creep along this kind of continuum, So, like I say, I've got stuff that's 3, 4, 5 years old, and I don't put very much in the fridge now, just because I like it to keep moving. I like it sourer. I like it fuller of all the beneficial stuff.
That's cool.
I'm definitely going to have a little bit more of a go.
Sorry, a minute ago, I think Mark rumbled us, and we didn't warn you before we started. But while we do the interview, sometimes if we change the question along the way or we do this and that, we type messages to each other on the MacBook. And I could see that you clocked us and you were like, they're not quite as attentive. They're giggling. Why are they giggling?
They're giggling. Someone suggested something. Yeah, and I was thinking,
why we kind of like, I've just put on the spreadsheet, you say what you want next, Ellen.
Basically, we had our list of questions, and Michael removed one, and I was like, "What have you removed it? That's a great question." And then he put, "Oh, say what you want."
He misbehaves.
Well,
he does misbehave.
Well, we were going to pivot. You can pivot. Go on.
I'm going to pivot anyway.
I'll let her pivot.
But the reason why I would like to pivot is because I heard you do some talks at Malvern this year, and I have had the pleasure of tasting some of your very delicious herby alcoholic cocktails. And you talked about growing and using different herbs to what we might generally have in the garden. And so I wanted to pivot towards herbs because I think it's really interesting. You'd mentioned a vodka cocktail, I think, with sweet Sicily in, and you'd also, we talked about using coriander seeds on blueberries. So there's all these different ways of using herbs that we don't usually use.
And he's always banging on about ginger rosemary as well.
There you go. See, I just wanted to touch on the herbs thing because I think that would be really interesting for listeners. Obviously, you said that your wife is, she works with herbs. She's a herbalist as well. So you have all of that.
Yeah, but she's and many of the edible ones are also useful kind of medicinally, but my interest is predominantly with the edible stuff. And I'm a real fan of, I'm often asked to sort of design either edible gardens or particularly herb gardens. And my first thing that I kind of advise people to do, which they sometimes disagree with, and that's totally fine, is I say, don't grow the stuff you eat most because you'll end up absolutely mashing it. Your garden will look a bit rubbish all the time and you'll keep buying stuff anyway. So all the really common stuff that you like to eat a lot of, so if it's coriander or parsley or rosemary or thyme, maybe carry on buying that because you'll have to dedicate so much space to accommodate it that you'll end up with more of a, less diversity in your garden. But instead of growing, say, thyme, let's grow orange thyme, let's grow lemon thyme, make it slightly different, things you can't buy, but down the same sort of road. And just even that difference of making a recipe with orange or lemon thyme rather than using regular thyme totally transforms it in a different way. So it's fresher with lemon thyme and it's maybe slightly more autumnal with orange thyme. Ginger rosemary, like you said, Mike, I absolutely love it. But that with rhubarb, man alive, because ginger and rosemary with rhubarb. But, so grow that one and go and buy your rosemary or pinch some from somebody else's garden.
Or just have a hidden herb plot, kind of somewhere you don't see, where you are annihilating regularly. Yeah,
exactly. But it's so easy to damage the plant by over harvesting in your enthusiasm to use all the time you want or whatever. But there are some, that Vietnamese coriander I grow a lot of instead of regular coriander. It doesn't go to seed, it's perennial, it's beautiful, slightly more citrusy version of regular coriander. Buy it once, you've got it forever. There's so many brilliant herbs to be used beyond the familiar, which is not to say I don't love the familiar. I really do.
Yeah, before we come to the end of the podcast, but before we kind of wrap up, I just want to ask a little bit about how you put your recipes together, because obviously you've written many books over the years. Like, is it a lot of trial and error? Do you sometimes like feel in your head what would work, or through experience, kind of like, meals you've had out in the UK, abroad, or, does it take quite a few goes to get a recipe right as well?
Some of all of that. That's really interesting. There's a lot of recipes. It's very hard to come up with a new recipe, and if you do, you're likely to have invented something that's a bit grim. For all those. It's just the way it is. So, what you can do is come up with your version of something that's familiar, or a totally kind of weird look at something normal. So, I don't know if you're familiar with medlars, which are kind of an old English fruit that people generally don't know much to do with, apart from maybe make jelly and stuff.
I have one on my allotment. I planted one a few years ago.
One of the great fruit, really. But how do you use it, and so on and so on. But I was having a chat with Xanthi Clay, who's a kind of food writer on Twitter, and she came up with the idea for a sticky toffee pudding, but a medlar sticky toffee pudding. Oh. And I'm like, okay, I've got to try that. It was medlar time of year. So sometimes you get inspiration from somewhere else. I came up with the recipe and she's like, oh my God, that's incredible. And often it is tweaking something you already know. Sometimes it's going, oh, do you know what? I make Nigel Slater's crumble like this, but I wonder if it'd be better like that, And usually the answer
I can do better than that.
Yeah. And usually that turns into I can do different to that rather than better. Obviously, is great. But it's a combination of all those things. But some of them you do it once. It's like yesterday, Paul McCartney woke up one morning and went, oh my God, I dreamt a song, picked up his guitar, and he didn't have the words, but he had the melody and he had the chords, and he was playing it going, and he said to each of the Beatles one at a time, what's this? And they were like, I've never heard it. And they were like, no, I must do, and it was like, I've never heard it. And it was originally called Baked Beans, I think. And he, off it went, but it just came into his head. And sometimes that happens. You just have a moment where you're going, I wonder if, and then you make it once. It's like, oh my God, that's great. But equally, sometimes you might make it 5, 6, 8 times and end up dumping it because it's still crap. But there's a germ of something there that maybe reappears another time. So it's a combination of all the things you said there, Michael.
It's a real process, isn't it? Yeah. So you've got a new book out. Tell us a bit more about that before we finish.
In 5 weeks. So it's so the last big book was Herb, A Cook's Companion, which is kind of real deep dive into using familiar and unusual herbs, but also different growing them as well, but also how to maybe use them in a slightly more interesting way, or in a way that brings out their flavor slightly differently. And spice is a sort of sister to it. Won't have the growing stuff because most of the spices we can't grow here, but a real wealth of kind of global recipes. I've got I think 14 contributors who are better able than I to represent other food cultures around the world, and go, right, this is a fantastic recipe from Pakistan. This is why it uses these herbs. It's a really interesting way of doing it, and it's slightly different in Pakistan to it is, say, in northern India, but there's a bit of a link. And I really wanted to kind of make sure that this book was, while it is my book of spice, I wanted to make it as open and not complete, but rounded. And I thought the best way to do that is by inviting, this group of different collaborators who were able to go, I can talk to you about Mexico. I can talk to you about, and then I can play in the space in the middle,
What a great idea.
Yeah, no, it's I'm so chuffed with it. I'm really, really pleased with it. And what they've brought to it has totally made sense of the rest of it. And this is the thing about a book, is that while you may write the words and whatever, it seems ridiculous that it's only your name on the cover, because there's so many people, the designer, the editor, who makes you what's really a fun thing. I get, I write this stuff and I send it off to the editor and she sends it back and I'm looking at it going, yeah, she's done nothing to that. I'm bloody great. Look at it. It reads magic. And then you compare it and you're going, she's just made me into a much better version of me. And it's such a team thing, but I do love it, and I'm really chuffed with this new book. So yeah, that's September. Yeah, so it's pretty much.
Where will people be able to buy it from?
Well, you can pre-order it now, and the advantage of pre-ordering is if you pre-order, then you get 5 extra recipes in this kind of nice PDF will be sent to you. So that's a pretty good advantage to doing it, and that's it's a great thing. And they aren't just kind of extra recipes. There were 5 that would have made it, but you're going, I just for space, or it would have the balance was a little bit out. But they're absolute belters. There's a really lovely cocktail. There's chicken salt. Big deal in Australia, chicken salt, used on everything. And I came up with this recipe for chicken salt, which is essentially chickeny salt that you sprinkle on things, and it's delightful. Not particularly plant-based, it's true, but nevertheless delightful. But lots of plant-based stuff in the rest of it too.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Where can listeners find more about you? Do you have a website or like your social media?
Are you on
Instagram? I'm there on Instagram. There's not many Mark Diaconos on Instagram. And there's Otter Farm. I've got my Substack, which is what's it called? It's called The Imperfect Umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's called The Imperfect Umbrella because it's an imperfect umbrella under which I can.
Yeah, nice.
So
that's very, very cool. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's really made me think more about using my harvest from the allotment.
You explained it in such a clear way as well. I don't think, sometimes you move along in life and you think you understand something, and like someone says, I know what that is, when you kind of don't really. And that really explained it, So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
I've had a really, really fun time. It's total joy to be part of what you do, and complete honour to be on it. So thank you for having me.
We are very honoured to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much. We will let you get on with the rest of your evening, but I'm just going to go and make Michael try my fermented.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Whatever it is.
Our gardens change every day, and a lovely way to capture your garden artistically is to paint it. And it doesn't need to be a daunting task. I'm Emma Britton, decorative glass designer. I'm inspired by beautiful flowers to create my glass splashbacks, and last time I was here, I talked about my own inspiration for my work and how I get it from the garden. And so I thought it'd be really nice to share with you some tips for painting outside. Painting is a great way to capture the garden in summer, as paint's a really lovely medium for capturing those kind of vivid, bright, hot colours. Planning ahead is key to a painting trip outside, and you don't want to be rushed, so make sure you've got like a few hours in case you really get into that groove. So here's my top tips for things to take with you. Something waterproof to sit on, as you don't want to get a wet bottom, a pencil, a rubber, paints, paintbrushes, 2 water bottles, one for you, and then the other one to rinse out your paintbrushes in. I also like to make a makeshift paint palette, and I do this with a Tupperware lid, and I put some tinfoil over it, and then when I'm on location, I can mix up my colours, and then when I finish, I can fold it away and take it home with me. Finally, you will need a sketchbook. A3 is a really good size because you don't get too constrained on the page. So all you need to do now is head to your garden or a public garden, get yourself comfortable, maybe take a sun hat, and have a go at capturing something that really inspires you. Maybe you'd like to try these exercises. So the first one I like to do is a 10-minute painting. So I try and get the scene that I want to get onto the page in 10 minutes. And this is really great because it loosens you up. And then I do the same thing again. And at this time I do the same painting, but I take an hour. And then I have a look at the two and I see which one I prefer. And often it'll be that a quick one that is the winner. See what you think. And if you are in a public garden, be prepared for people peeking over your shoulder to see what you're doing. It's a great way to get that early feedback.
Floret are a farmer-owned cooperative passionate about what they produce and sponsor of the Plant-Based Podcast. Grown by a network of local farmers who work to bring you the tastiest salads of the highest quality. So how will you make your dish unflorettable.
Hey, Michael, your face looks like you've got a bit of a suntan there.
I do. I think I do have a tan. Have you even got a flip-flop mark?
that
Not on my
means
face,
that definitely
my
means
body.
it's got tan.
But I've still been hacking away at this aloe vera.
Are you putting it on every single night?
Well, any time of day, really. But I just put it on before I went for lunch in the restaurant. And because it flakes off, because obviously, I don't blend it perfectly. So then I'm in the restaurant, there's all these bits like falling off my face.
I am slightly confused about
like
you
facial
putting
dandruff.
Oh my God, I can see it from here now. You just got close to the camera. You got it all on your forehead.
Have I? Oh.
I do think you can overdo it, dude.
No, I know.
Once a day's enough.
Oh, I don't need you lecturing me. Anyway, how's your balcony? That's what everyone wants to know.
All right, fine. Well, don't be complaining at me about your skin then. It's
But we need to know if your balcony is alive.
My balcony is alive. I've arrived in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Most things are alive. There's a lot that don't look so well. And I will just say what I mentioned to you the other day. My husband, we've been married 20 years this year, yeah? And I've always been gardening that whole time. There's never been a break in it. And he picks up things, but he's just not into it. And so I leave him with instructions, but very loose. Like, I'm not going to dictate what he has to do, but I'm kind of like, don't forget these need deadheading and keep on top of watering because it gets really, really hot here. And it's containers, on a balcony, so they dry it really quick. And feed once a week. Really, I leave it at that. Anything that dies, you can replace it. You don't want it to, but you can replace it.
Yeah.
And then when I got back, there was a ton of stuff that needed deadheading. And some stuff had been overwatered and some stuff hadn't been watered at all. Or hadn't been watered enough. But that's because as gardeners, we know the plant. So we know if it needs more. And you look at it and it's telling you that it needs more or less. And then I was like, have you been watering them? And he was like, yeah, I've been watering them every single day. And I'm like, all of them, like all the way through. And he's like, yeah, but I'd said water every day. Do you know what I mean? But I hadn't said, but keep your eye on one that might not need watering every single day. Do you know what I mean? And then
you had some dianthus maybe.
I had this Acer that I've been looking for forever. And it's so poorly because it's actually been overwatered.
Oh, no way.
Do you see, so it's like, and you forget as a gardener that someone that just doesn't do it at all.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's hard.
I guess when you haven't got an interest, you wouldn't naturally pick it up because maybe there's things that he's good at that you simply wouldn't pick up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most stuff. Yeah. I only know about gardening. I don't know anything else. He's better than me at everything else. But it's just like, and then the calibrachoa that are in the hanging baskets, you might want to remove any kind of dying foliage. But he was really confused because the flower's at the end of the stem, but the foliage is all died off. And he was like, I don't know what to do because it's still flowering. Do you see what I mean? But all the foliage is red and brown.
Yeah.
So I'm not...
I think actually the big difference between non-gardeners and gardeners is, and this is going to be groundbreaking, Ellen, so wait for this, right?
Yeah.
Gardeners know that you can harm a plant.
Yeah.
So non-gardeners are very emotional about it. They're kind of like, oh no, this bit's broken, or if I take this bit off, is that going to kill the whole plant? It's like, and I think we are happy that we know that a plant can be manipulated or harmed, and that's for the good of it as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you gardeners are just a bit worried about doing something that will kill the plant. And I was like, but look at the bottom of the stem, there's all this new growth. So you just nip it off above that new growth and it's going to, it's going to look great. But it's like that scare, like, oh, I don't know what, I daren't kind of pinch it off kind of thing, And I was like, wow. So there was a bit of work to do, but all in all, it's alive.
Yeah. But that might be more because he's terrified of you telling him off.
I knew you were going to say that, but he isn't. He definitely isn't terrified of that.
Or maybe he just watered everything the night before you came home, and then that's why everything's drowned. It's like when you tidy up before your parents come home, you know?
Oh, he does that inside. I think he has watering the balcony, but inside is a definite hurry up, rush around, and tidy up before Ellen gets back. You
know me, Ellen. I'm like you. I'm not kind of anally tidy, but I'm kind of. I think I'm fairly orderly, but like my partner, like when I'm away, would just be living like a student.
Yeah, that's my husband.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's just bizarre.
That's so funny. So anyway, how's your last few days been? Like, what have you been up to? Still out there, aren't you?
Yeah, I've been to some cool nurseries. I was looking around. I was punching some hydrangeas on Friday. That was cool.
Them?
Yeah, to test the paniculatas. Oh. It's really interesting because a couple of times online when you've got just someone sour online who was always a bit negative, blah, 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 blah. And someone had said, like, oh, why do we need new plants or this or that, right? And you see, because there's like, I took a picture of one of the trial plants of one of the original kind of paniculata hydrangeas that kind of really kicked off the trend, which is vanilla fraise, which is one you may have heard of.
Yeah.
But when you look at the rain tolerance of this compared to any of these new ones, it is just flop central. Right. And it's there, just completely collapsed. And then this is why we need to improve plants, because this is not great for a gardener. It doesn't look good. It doesn't give you confidence. You're going to need to stake it, extra work, extra maintenance, So this is why we keep developing new stuff. And so, I've had a really lovely couple of days just looking around and meeting people, going to a big trade show tomorrow. Yeah, so it's cool. I love it. And people love me looking around as well, because like they're excited that I'm showing the commercial side of the business to the public as well, because I know we talked last week about machinery and this and that, but also the fact that you've got new plant trials, plants to develop, big greenhouses, this is all adding to the value of the plant and explaining why a hydrangea might cost £20 in a 4-litre pot. All of these costs is like the development, all of that stuff, even down to when it's being produced, when it's actually created as a plant at the beginning. So, it's really, really cool to be on the doorstep of all this stuff.
Also, we mustn't forget that the horticultural industry is massive. It brings so much into the economy. And if we're breeding new plants, that would be a whole lot of job losses. But also, what would the landscape look like if we didn't cultivate and breed new plants? Like, I know. What would things look like? It wouldn't be anything like it now.
Yeah, and to improve, and obviously, these days we're looking at more kind of, drought tolerance, different environmental factors as well. So, people are always kind of talking about the original plants, the OGs and stuff, but like there is a space, there's a big space for new improvements as well. So, it's really cool.
And also the original plants, like we always talk about natives, and natives are totally important and essential, definitely not taking that away. But some of those original plants will not cope in the climate, that's, 50 years or so. So if we want to be able to provide, plants for pollinators and, enjoy our cultivating gardens, then we do need plants.
It's all a balance, young Ellen.
It is, I agree. Totally balanced. Oh, well, that's exciting.
I know. And what inspiration did you draw from this week's podcast interview?
From this week's podcast interview, I'm actually going to attempt to try fermenting better. I was only asking you to test you to see if you remembered what it was. But you were on to me. You are so naughty.
I think you had it written down on a Post-it note.
I have to just say, I do love Mark. The first time I ever saw him do a talk was...
Are you reading that off a Post-it note as well?
No, I'm sitting here looking at half a banana I'm desperate to eat.
Oh, that's the story of your life, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Half a banana.
Only half, yeah.
That's what they should call your autobiography, Ellen. I'm staring at half a banana.
I would have thought it would be like a slice of melon or something.
No.
That's a great name for an autobiography.
I don't know if you got my pun the other day when I said that you'd grown yourself when you grew a melon.
Of course I got your pun.
Oh, you got it? Oh, I wasn't sure.
I don't know what you wanted me to say.
Well, no, I just know Norfolk humour doesn't always hit the spot sometimes.
Because it's way above Suffolk humour, that's why.
Anyway, sorry, back to the story. What was it? Fermenting.
I've seen Mark at shows and some of his books, but in person, I met him for the first time at Malvern Spring Festival this year, and he was doing talks in that.
That was the first time? Yeah.
The first time I've heard him do a talk, or met him in person, like to talk to. And he done a few talks at where I think he was doing one every day, and it was about kind of different herbs, and then he was making up a little cocktail using various different herbs. And he's just so knowledgeable and such a down to earth, fun, interesting guy.
And just chilled and funny as well.
Really chill, but he knows such a lot about using, what we've grown in the kitchen in numerous like different ways, which is super interesting. And I know like he's known for being great at fermenting and that kind of thing. And like I said, I tried to ferment before. I've tried sauerkraut, and I
reckon you didn't vacuum seal.
It was vacuum sealed.
I'm not sure if that's a thing, but it sounds good.
I think it was the salt. So there's these little tips that he said, in this.
About the quantities,
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to have another go this year.
That's cool.
But
he was talking about even sugar snaps, fermenting those and stuff.
Yeah.
Really?
I think you can ferment just about anything, really.
Yeah.
We think fermenting is basically for cabbage, but really I think you could.
There's so much to open up there. I really enjoyed it, and he is really funny as well. He's really witty. He's like a kind of strawberry blonde version of me, basically. I would say, a
strawberry blonde version of you.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. In the
Ellen, how's your allotment? Is it blown down?
Well, might have done by the time I get back. It's fine. It's been a slightly different year to usual, and there's been times where I fell out of love with it.
Oh no way! So you nearly set fire to it?
Well, I think the weather done that itself.
Oh no!
Yeah, I mean, because I'm not there all year. I'm back and forward, and this year has been a lot more intense than previous. So, and then there's been the heat, and I'm not going to be watering every day either. So,
well, no, do you know what I mean? We always say this, Ellen, my darling, but gardening is quite hard work.
It is hard work. Yeah, it can be.
I know.
For sure. So there's been some amazing successes which I've really enjoyed, and then there's been stuff like that, but I'm pretty chill with it.
Oh, that's cool.
They don't work out.
That's cool, darling. I'm going to, in a minute, to a dahlia farm to pick some dinner plate dahlias. So, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, your photographs. Instagram's going to go wild.
I did this, it was a really popular article. I put together like about 40 of the different dahlias I'd seen over the last week. And it was went wild on my website. Who'd have thought people look at websites anymore, Ellen Mary?
I know, that's true. Who does? But dahlias they're just still kind of the in thing. And I know we discussed it on last week's episode, didn't we?
It's just mad.
But we can definitely make it easier for ourselves. In fact, I'm saying about the allotment, the dahlias have done amazing this year. And cool. With very little water. Very little. Just a good. I
wonder how my poor little ones are in my garden.
Are they planted or in pots?
They're in the ground, yeah.
Have you got are your parents watering your garden for you while you're away?
No, maybe a couple of times. But garden, to be fair, a garden has to look after itself. And also, because I'm not there so often, it extra needs to look after itself, know. And I almost don't believe in watering the garden, because I don't know, it feels like containers, but the garden, I'd like to train that to look after itself a little bit more,
It's just about planting the right plants, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in the right way, and then a really good mulch.
And the mulch, darling,
is everything. It is everything. I cannot the difference on my allotment from doing with the thick mulch it's incredible.
But Ellen, stop there. The next frontier.
Yeah.
Living mulch.
Living mulch. Oh, is this your ground cover?
Did you see it?
I saw it.
Amazing?
It's so cool. Tell us about it.
God. Well, it's this little plant called Waldsteiner ternata, and for years I just kind of looked at this and it's really boring looking plant. It's just a little ground cover thing, has a yellow flower in the spring. And I was at this trial garden yesterday, and they got all of their plants laid out in the garden, and I'm seeing there's this green carpet beneath everything. It looks so strange. I'm like, what's this? And so I was then obsessed with this plant that was underplanting. It looked like a green carpet. It almost looked like, bark covering the soil, but it was this plant, Waldsteiner. And it was creating this complete mat that made the plants look really neat, on this green screen backdrop. And it obviously knitted together. The weeds weren't coming through at all. It has yellow flowers in the spring, so it must look really strange in the spring with this kind of yellow underplanting. But the rest of the year, it's really this densely packed almost plant like a very small hardy geranium. And it really got me thinking of using ground cover plants in a really dense way is living mulch, isn't it?
Well, I mean, they do that quite a lot here in North Carolina. You will see quite a lot of ground cover plants. I don't know what they all are. I have absolutely no idea. I'm wondering now you've said this, if that's one of the reasons why. I don't know.
Well, they always do it really well in Holland. And, like Pachysandra, they use that plant quite a lot, which looks nice. Muhlenbeckia is one that would be very good for like that ground cover effect as well. But yeah, it's really cool because it gives you this real carpeting look as well. Yeah, I was obsessed. I wasn't even looking at the plants I should have been. I was just looking at this mulch. And, it's funny because when I go to like these different companies and breeders, I'm looking at things from such a different angle to what they expect sometimes. And they're kind of like, and then they realize when I put it up as a reel, they're kind of like, oh yeah, that is kind of, because I think big companies get very tied up in selling the product the way they think it should be sold. But then because we kind of know our audiences and what gets people excited online, we kind of translate that a little bit. So I had the same with when I was punching the hydrangeas, because I was like, well, we're always talking about hydrangeas being bred for being strong, but how can we really show that? Do you know what I mean? So like the guy was then shaking it a bit and kind of like hugging it to show it was strong. And then I was like, wow, let's go one further. And I just punched it. And that you'll see that on my reel as well, Ellen Mary. I must say my reels are very, they're not like carefully crafted or everything, but they're a very interesting library, if I say so myself. So I would urge anyone to go and have a look. Mr._Plant Geek.
We love a little bit of self-promotion, don't we?
But they are. I think they're really good, Ellen. And I wouldn't say I put my heart and soul into it, but they're just kind of like, I don't know, just things that happen that I think are cool and interesting and easy to digest. And yeah, there you go. Boom, boom, bang, a bang. Like cut flower nasturtiums.
You can basically watch Michael punching a hydrangea, something that everyone wants to see.
And what else you'll see on there, Ellen Mary, you'll get a chance to promote something in a minute, is Ipomoea, Morning Glory. Yeah. Double flowered version. Imagine that.
Is it on there?
Yeah. It's on my reels. Set to a soundtrack of Who Do You Think You Are by the Spice Girls.
Just so you know, I hate Instagram at the moment. So.
Oh, why?
Because it's not showing me all the stuff I want to see. I'm literally getting ads and things that I'm not.
To be honest, I hated it 2 weeks ago, but I kind of forgot about that now.
Yeah, but all I'm seeing is stuff that I'm not interested in seeing. I'm really confused. Like, so I have to literally go and look for what I want to see, and then that's time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this a reel?
Go and look now.
Is it a reel?
Yeah. I've actually had a couple of direct messages complimenting me on my uses of music, Ellen, as well. Because I use very niche songs and little-known 80s songs sometimes as well.
You are a music buff. Are you ready for this?
Yeah. Oh, that's my video. Hello. It's cool, isn't it?
That is very beautiful.
I know. What else is there?
It looks a little bit, well, the colour of it is like bougainvillea, yeah?
Yeah.
It's very
wild.
beautiful.
I mean, it's been kicking around for years. We used to have one at Thompson & Morgan and we called it Split Personality. This is about 15 years ago. But as we often say, Ellen, like plants, new plants, and kind of, it's all having such a revival. So many of these things I worked on years ago are kind of, we need to kind of refresh people on them all because we have a totally new audience.
It's like fashion. Everything comes around. Like there's so much 80s stuff now at the moment out there with clothing, with haircuts, and with like loads of like music. There's this sort of 80s retro kind of thing. And it's funny that that's also kind of for the plants as well.
Yeah, defo. And just kind of, I think because when I was product developing was a different time. Social media wasn't there to kind of amplify these cool things either. So
yeah. That's very cool, Mr. Planky.
It's weird. Oh, thank you very much. It's almost sometimes I like to do the job I was doing then, product development, kind of now.
Yeah.
I think it would be wild.
Woo! Boom! Mic drop.
I just think it would be because, it's a really different audience. And when I was originally working on product development and putting catalogs together, can you imagine? You just wouldn't get any sort of feedback
No.
Because there was no, you just sent the catalogues out and that was it. Which is kind of strange.
Well,
but now
I know you're not doing
you would definitely get that real-time feedback.
I know you're not doing product development directly, but you are showing off the new products. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I guess
you are involved still. So that's...
I guess because I'm not involved directly, I'm showing them. It's not always clear kind of the route to then get them because I'm just kind of showing, if you know what I mean. Like, if it was in Thompson Morgan days, you'd then know where to buy it or this or that.
Yeah.
But then,
if you were doing pure product development, you wouldn't be able to show and tell a lot of the stuff like you do.
Yeah, you're right, actually. As this is, I'm kind of like a spoiler. Like this website, Digital Spy, that kind of puts news up about Coronation Street and EastEnders before it goes live.
So basically, your new tag should be Mr. Plant Spy.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Ellen.
Oh, Michael.
Oh, I might need to go in 6 minutes.
Why 6 minutes specifically?
Because that seems like a nice round number.
Okay, well, for 6 minutes, I want to tell you about my little wellbeing studio, People Plants Wellbeing. So, I'm going to give it a plug as well. If you check out People Plants Wellbeing online.
Plug your rug.
It's an Instagram account all about bringing people and plants together for good well-being, and it's about to have a little bit of a shake-up. The Wellbeing Studio has always been on my website. That's how it all began, but it's going to have a standalone website, and it's turned into a full wellbeing consultancy. So I have some other like wellness coaches working together to provide wellness coaching sessions, one-to-one, or corporate sessions and wellbeing retreats and all of that kind of stuff. So peopleplantswellbeing.com. Woo!
Hey, that's mega cool. Well done.
Yeah, it is really exciting.
Oh my gosh. What else are you up to this week? Admin Central.
No, I'm going to the beach this week, actually. We're going to drive
over away,
I'm going to visit the University of Charlotte Botanic Gardens later on this afternoon. But then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're heading over to the coast. So we're going to go to down to South Carolina, then Georgia, and just on the tip of Florida, all along that kind of coastline, and spend some time.
It's nice on the tip.
Just on the tip. We're like going to go to Driftwood Beach, where there's all like dead wood that's washed out. The trees are growing.
Oh, cool.
Amazing. So I'm going to the beach basically for some sunshine and sea air.
And a road trip, but it is sunny there, right?
Oh yeah, it's beautifully sunny. But, my husband's been working really hard this year. He's barely had like any time off, and then he had COVID. So we're just.
God, I couldn't work like that.
No, he works really like non-stop, really.
Yeah, definitely not like us. No,
definitely not like us.
No, but we work hard, but at our passion, which is a big difference, I think, Ella Mary.
It does. Well, he's passionate about what he does, but it's just a lot of desk work, you know. Anyway, we're going to go to the beach and chill. So that would be lovely.
Well, ding to the dong.
Ding to the dong, yeah. Well, thanks so much for attending today's gossip, Michael.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Did anyone take minutes? Cool. See you, babe.
Bye.
The music for the Plant Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.